That sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a normal smile. Then he moved to the right side of the truck and I followed him, holding my bat firmly, ready to strike if necessary. I thought he might try to climb into the cabin from the passenger side, but he didn't. He moved toward the rear of the truck, heading for the trailer. I remind you that everything was completely dark, and the only lights illuminating the area were the orange hazard lights, so visibility was poor, making it even more sinister. The man walked toward the back and I followed him, convinced he might try to open the trailer or mess with the wheels. He walked about 7 meters ahead of me when he suddenly did something unexpected. Before reaching the end of the trailer, he turned to the right, and just as I thought he was going to hit the trailer, he passed right through it. I know you might think I'm crazy, but I swear that's what happened. In the most terrifying way, I realized that this man wasn't alive. He wasn't made of flesh and blood. I didn't know if he was a ghost or something worse. Seeing how he passed through the box and disappeared filled me with terror. I ran frantically toward the cabin to climb in, but just as I was right in front of my truck, I saw him again. That same man was sitting on the passenger side, smiling. Despite the cabin's internal lights being off, I could see his eyes and his horrible smile glowing in the darkness. I felt an intense fear, far stronger than when I saw that woman in white next to my father, following us behind the truck. At least that time I wasn't alone. Now I was completely by myself. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stay outside, but I was also terrified of climbing in. I was petrified at the thought of facing something I had no idea how to deal with. For a moment, we stared at each other, and he offered me a clear mockery with his grotesque smile. Somehow, I wanted to prove to him that I wouldn't let myself be intimidated. I don't know where I mustered the courage, but I ran and climbed into the cabin on the driver's side. When I got in, there was no one there. I turned on my phone's flashlight and checked every corner, but again there was no one. The courage I had gathered to climb in vanished instantly. I felt a horrible chill and a deep terror. Without thinking twice and without confirming anything over the radio, I floored the gas pedal. Honestly, I didn't care if the checkpoint was still there. Under no circumstances was I going to stop. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. Thank God, as I passed that section of the road, it was empty. There was no one. As I accelerated at full speed, I suddenly noticed that the truck no longer responded. I was at the limit, my hands and feet trembling. In a brief moment of clarity, I realized how risky what I was doing was, both for me and for other drivers. It was very early in the morning, but I decided it wasn't worth continuing to put my life at risk. I slowed down. I crossed Cataro, and a few minutes later, I arrived at Paracho, reaching the destination company at 5 a.m. As soon as I parked at the dock, they started unloading. Meanwhile, I took the chance to relax and try to get some rest. On the return trip, I decided to avoid that place entirely. I left the company after 10 a.m. and chose to take a long detour to return to Mexico City. I didn't care if I got reprimanded. I didn't want to face that situation again. If someone asked me, I'd explain later. But thank God the return trip was peaceful and without incidents. And so, another one of the many terrifying experiences I've had on the road concluded. If you're interested, I'll gladly share more stories in the future. For now, I'll say goodbye, wishing you all the best and thanking you for listening. Have a very good night. My name is Jose Alberto, and I was a federal police officer. During my time in the force, I had a variety of experiences, some very gratifying that I will always remember with satisfaction. Anecdotes shared with comrades and friends that will remain in my memory. However, I also faced dangerous moments and others that were unsettling, which unfortunately will stay etched in my mind forever. More than once, we risked our lives to fulfill our duty, confronting people and adversities. Moreover, on several occasions we encountered the unknown, things from the supernatural realm. Tonight, I want to share one of those experiences, perhaps one of the most impactful and widely known since there were numerous witnesses, not only from my unit. The past decade was one of the toughest we faced in the country, as crime surged alarmingly, and the fight against cartels claimed thousands of lives. There were towns and even entire states under the control of these organizations. To avoid being outmatched in personnel and weaponry, it was necessary to coordinate with other government agencies to confront them. With this in mind, allow me to recount a terrifying experience shared by many officers. In 2014, during an operation, several colleagues and I were sent to the state of Michoacán, specifically to a town called Nueva Italia de Ruiz, located in the Tierra Caliente region. Curiously, the name reflected the area's situation quite well, not only because of the intense heat but also due to the frequent confrontations with organized crime. In this area there is a ranch known as La Peligrosa. According to orders from our superiors, we met there with elements of the Mexican army and personnel from the Federal Judicial Police. We were informed that we would all participate in an operation to establish bases in different points of the mountains and other remote areas known as BOM, Mixed Operations Bases. The objective was to organize missions to locate and destroy drug labs in the mountains and cultivation areas controlled by the cartels. The base where my colleagues and I were stationed was established in a town called Cupuan del Rio, also in Michoacan. There we found a test track belonging to the well-known General Motors brand, which was in a very deteriorated state. Apparently, they had decided to abandon the area due to constant theft and extortion by organized crime. This track formed a large circle, and in the center was an open area we used to set up our camp. From there, we organized our expeditions to carry out the assigned searches. All personnel were divided into two groups. One half, which included my colleagues and me, would leave for a week to search for illegal crops, while the other half stayed at the camp to maintain communications and be ready to provide support if needed. Honestly, I felt quite nervous about leaving the base, knowing we would spend 7 days walking through the mountains, completely exposed and risking an ambush. During my time as a federal police officer, I experienced a wide variety of situations, some very positive, filling me with satisfaction when I recall them, and others shared as anecdotes with colleagues and friends that I will always carry in my memory. However, I also faced very dangerous moments and other unsettling experiences that, unfortunately, will remain etched in my mind. On more than one occasion we risked our lives to fulfill our mission, confronting individuals in difficult circumstances. There were also instances where we encountered unknown phenomena of a supernatural nature. Today I want to share with you one of these experiences, one of the most impactful and known to many people as it was witnessed by dozens of individuals, not just from my unit. The context in the country during that decade was extremely harsh. Crime had increased alarmingly, and the war against the cartels claimed thousands of lives. There were towns and even entire states practically under the control of these criminal organizations. To avoid being overwhelmed in terms of personnel and resources, it was necessary to coordinate with other government agencies to confront them. With this background, I'll recount a chilling experience that occurred in 2014 during an operation where several of my colleagues and I were sent to the state of Michoacán, specifically to a place called Nueva Italia de Ruiz, in the region known as Tierra Caliente. Interestingly, the name of the place fits its reality perfectly, not only for the intense heat felt there but also for the frequent clashes with organized crime in the area. In this region, there is a ranch known as La Peligrosa, the dangerous one. According to instructions from our superiors, we gathered there with members of the Mexican Army and personnel from the General Police of Justice. We were informed that all of us would participate in an operation where we would set up bases in different points of the mountains and other remote areas, known as BOMs, Mixed Operation Bases. The objective was to organize missions to locate and destroy narco-laboratories in the mountains and in cultivation areas controlled by the cartels. The base assigned to my colleagues and me was established in a town called Cupuan del Rio, also in Michoacan. There, we found a General Motors testing track that was very deteriorated. Apparently, the company had decided to abandon the area due to constant thefts and extortion by organized crime. This track formed a large circle, and in the center was an open area that we used to set up our camp. From there, we would organize our expeditions to carry out the assigned searches. All personnel was divided into two groups. The first half, which included my colleagues and me, would go out for a week to search for illegal crops, while the other half would stay at the camp to maintain communications and be ready to send support if needed. Honestly, I felt quite nervous about having to leave the base as we were going to spend 7 days walking through the mountains, completely exposed and at risk of suffering an ambush. Fortunately, everything went well. Ironically, the reason I am writing to you now happened when we returned to the base. All of us arrived very frightened and shaken by a strange phenomenon that occurred during the nights. To explain, while staying at that base, the soldiers were constantly exposed to a potential attack by members of organized crime. That's why there were always at least 10 soldiers from the army protecting the perimeter, which was much smaller than the track I mentioned, shaped like a circle. The soldiers who were part of the guards reported that during the early hours of the morning, they saw a man crossing the facilities from one side to the other. The most unsettling detail was that this man was not alive. The first time they saw him was early one morning. The guards, who were watching over the area, saw a man coming out from among the trees and approaching them. They described him as a tall man wearing a hat that obscured his features, and the strangest part was that his figure resembled more of a shadow. The soldiers, alarmed, focused their flashlights on him, warning him that he was in a secured zone. However, the man did not stop and continued to move forward. 2 soldiers approached him, and when they were at a prudent distance, they greeted him, asking him to